Ciao a tutti, benvenuti, sono Reza e stai guardando Facile come Italiano. So hello everybody, welcome to Easy as Italian. I'm Reza, as I said, and if you remember, some days, or better to say some weeks ago, we talked about subjunctive present, right? It would be troviamo, troviate, trovino, okay, trovino. What a good time. But now we want to talk about subjunctive imperfect. You remember that, for example, in indicative tenses, we had imperfetto, right? Imperfect. Now, we used to translate the imperfect tense in English as past continuous and a couple of times as simple past. You remember I have the whole video represented to you. You can watch it right here, I guess, if I am right. And you can rewatch it. If you haven't watched it yet, you can watch it for the first time. It has some many good informations in that for you to know. Now, what is subjunctive? Just a very quick definition of that once again. Well, you know, when we talk English, we don't have anything as subjunctive. Subjunctive is when you talk about your desires, your ideas, or your thoughts. Okay, for example, in English I say, I think we are going home. Okay? I think we are going home. This is two sentences, okay? I think and we are going home. So I think is simple present. We are going home is simple present. In Italian, I think would be simple present, but we are going home is a thought. It's my thought. It's not something certain, so we use subjunctive to say it. It's actually quite different from the indicative tenses that we use, like the simple present of the indicative, the past perfect, I don't know, some things like this imperfect that we had in the indicatives. The subjunctives are quite different, but I have to say that they are easier than indicatives. Two reasons. First, they have less irregularities and less rules, and they are more straightforward and simple. Second, you know the indicatives, you know how the tenses work in Italian, so now you have a complete idea about how subjunctive will work. You just have to learn some quick patterns and some small rules. Now, I said that when we want to use subjunctive, we have to use it for the sentences that represent an idea, a desire, or a thought, something that is not certain. Now, this was about subjunctive present that we taught it. About subjunctive imperfect, when do we use that? Well, again, an idea that is happening in the past, but it hasn't finished. Kind of, how to say, imperfect. I've said the definition. Imperfect is a tense that doesn't finish because it's not perfect. Exactly. It never finishes, okay? It never gets completed. So, subjunctive imperfect is a sentence, a tense that never gets completed. In a time that never gets completed. Again, everything about ideas, desires, and thoughts. Let's see how to make imperfect in subjunctive, and then we will see some examples and learn how to use and where to use it. So I said, let's learn how to make subjunctive imperfect. It's so easy, in my opinion, way easier than subjunctive present, because it has less rules, it's way more simple and straightforward, it has less irregularities. And the only thing you need to learn about the conjugation of subjunctive imperfect is this pattern. Si, se, simo, ste, sero. Okay? You just have to take the root of your verb, kinda, and add this to the end. For example, we have a verb. You just have to do it a couple of times. You will see how simple it is. We have a verb, imparare. Okay? To learn. You take re, re, from the end of that verb. It's the infinitive, imparare. We take re, re. We get impara. Now we just have to add the pattern. Imparassi, imparassi, imparasse. Imparassimo, imparaste, imparassero. Let's say another verb, like andare, to go. It was irregular in most of the tenses in indicative tenses, right? Now here, it's regular. Andare, you just take re from the end. Andassi, andassi, andasse. Andassimo, andaste, andassero. Now, something about this tense that makes it easier than the others is that, if you remember, when I used to explain the conjugations of the tenses in Italian language, I used to always say that we have three forms of verbs in Italian language. The verbs that their infinitive ends with are, the ones that end with ire, and the verbs that end with ere. Now, each of these had a slightly different conjugation. Now, in subjunctive imperfect, they are all the same. You just add this pattern that I told you, si, sessimo, stessero, and you just have to take re from the end of each infinitive verb. Let's see, for example, we said about are verbs. Let's go with ire. For example, sentire. You just take re, senti, sentissi, sentissi, sentisse, sentissimo, sentiste, sentissero. Okay? Let's go with something that ends with ere. Like, I don't know, credere. Okay? Credessi, credessi, credesse. Credessimo, credeste, credessero. As easy as that. Now, there are surely some irregular verbs. Like, for example, essere. That is always irregular, as I've said. In all the tenses, it's irregular. Essere, to be. Here, it would be fossi, fossi, fosse. Fossimo, foste, fossero. Now, something particular about this tense is that essere only changes its rule, but not the pattern. The pattern is always the same. Just the root of the verb changes. Essere becomes fo. Okay? Fossi, fossi, fosse. Fossimo, foste, fossero. Another verb. Like, for example, avere. You remember, avere was irregular. In all the tenses we have learned till here, in subjunctive imperfect, is regular. So you just have avessi, avessi, avesse, avessimo, aveste, avessero. Easy. Let's see another verb. Like dire, to say. Dicessi, dicessi, dicesse, dicessimo, diceste, dicessero. Again, only the root changes. The pattern is always the same. Okay? Fare, to do, to make. Facessi, facessi, facesse, facessimo, faceste, facessero. As easy as that. It doesn't have many irregular verbs. Now, let's go to the example parts and let's see how we can use the subjunctive imperfect and where we can put it. So we said that subjunctives represent a desire, an idea, or a thought. Okay? An opinion. Now, we have to be careful that the first sentence makes the following sentence represent these things, desires, ideas, or thoughts. Okay? So, the first thing is that the first sentence should make this following sentence do that. Like, I think, okay, I want, I need it to be like that, I don't know, or I heard about this, I hope something happens. Okay, these kind of forms, when you work with subjunctives and see them in texts, you can kind of understand a circle of verbs, okay, that make their following sentence represent an idea or opinion or desire or thought. Okay, but that's for the practice part that you need to do by yourself. For now, I will just tell you where we can put the subjunctive imperfect. Well, for the subjunctive present, we put a first simple present sentence, simple present verb, at least better to say, and then we add the subjunctive present. Now here, we are talking about imperfect. So the first sentence that makes the following sentence represent the idea, desire, and thought should be in imperfect itself, but the indicative imperfect. You remember them. We had the pattern, the rule, it was very easy, right? We translated it as past continuous or a couple of times just simple past. So now, when we want to say a subjunctive imperfect, we need to be careful that our first sentence that makes the following sentence do those representations is in imperfect itself, but indicative. Now, for example, our first example is il mio amico pensava. It's imperfect of the indicative. He was thinking, okay? Or she was thinking. Pensava che lui capisse tutto. Il mio amico pensava. My friend was thinking che lui capisse tutto. That he was understanding everything, okay? Or he used to understand everything. That's the first one. Let's see the second one. Mi sembrava che loro avessero il raffreddore. Mi sembrava. It was seeming to me. I was assuming something like that. Che that loro avessero il raffreddore. They were having a cold. They were having a flu. Okay? Now the next one. Pensavo che andaste a casa più presto. Pensavo, I was thinking, che, that, andaste a casa. You were going home più presto, earlier, sooner, okay? I was thinking that you were going home earlier. Non pensavi che io bevessi così tanto caffè. Non pensavi che io bevessi così tanto caffè. Non pensavi. You weren't thinking che that io bevessi, I was drinking così tanto caffè, this much coffee. You weren't thinking that I was drinking this much coffee. Sinceramente pensavo che dicessi la verità. Sinceramente pensavo che dicessi la verità. Sinceramente, sincerely, I was thinking. Sinceramente pensavo. Sincerely, I was thinking che that dicessi la verità. You were saying the truth. Sincerely, I was thinking that you were saying the truth. That's all right. Now, next one. Mia mamma sperava che noi facessimo i compiti. Mia mamma sperava che noi facessimo i compiti. My mom was hoping that we were doing the homeworks. But was she right, though? And the last example in this form, credevo che mio zio non stesse molto bene. Credevo, I was believing that, che mio zio, my uncle, non stesse molto bene. Stesse is coming from stare, okay? It's another irregular verb that means to be, if you remember. Stare and essere both mean to be. I have said the difference a couple of times before. So, credevo che mio zio non stesse molto bene. I was believing that my uncle wasn't feeling so good. Now, I told you one way to use the imperfect. Now I'm gonna tell you another way to use the imperfect of subjunctive in your sentences. Mi piacerebbe che tu parlassi sul serio. Mi piacerebbe. Something is here. What is piacerebbe? What tense it is from? I've taught you before the tense conditional, right? It's conditional present. Now, we talked about it and we said that conditional present we translated with would in English language. Now, when we are using conditional in the first sentence, okay, that makes the following sentence represent an idea, desire, or thought, this time we have no conditional imperfect. So what should we use? Conditional present. So, mi piacerebbe che tu parlassi sul serio. Mi piacerebbe, I would like that tu parlassi sul serio. I would like that you were saying the truth, okay? Or I would prefer that you were saying the truth. I assume that you were saying the truth. And that's it. That was the session. I hope you've learned many things from it. Subjunctive imperfect, very easy and pretty useful. I would be glad to see you again. Remember to subscribe the channel to meet me once again and also see the other lessons I have about Italian language and how beautiful it can be and how easy it can be in some parts. See you in the next couple of days. Have fun, my friends.